In the deep forest, Camp Thornwood was quietly rising. Years ago, there was a mysterious incident at this campground, and since then, this place has been abandoned. However, this mysterious story was not just a legend for a group of brave young people. Among the young people were the adventurous and determined Helen, the witty and brave Tom, the agitated and careful Alex, and the calm and thoughtful Maya, who held them all together. These four, unable to suppress their curiosity, decided to go to this abandoned camp. With sunset, they arrived at the campsite. As it was getting dark quickly, the young people set up their tents and lit a fire to prepare for the night. However, they heard a faint scream. In the darkness, immediately after, silence reigned. No one could figure out what had happened. Helen stepped boldly out into the darkness, but he couldn't see anything. Just as he was about to turn back, he caught something moving with his eyes, but he was confused. He felt that something was moving around in the forest, but he did not know what it was. Suddenly, a shadow appeared outside the tent. Maya anxiously called out to her friends, watching the shadows. They saw strange figures appear in the light of the campfire. These figures were the mysterious beings that surrounded the campsite, and they had started to surround them. Alex hurriedly pulled a lantern out of his bags and shone a light on the figures. The figures disappeared under the light, and only silence remained around the young people. However, they still had a feeling that something was going around. In the deep silence, suddenly a strange melody began to rise in the forest. This melody was a mysterious song that came with the wind. A chill was felt within the young people, and they felt that the mysterious figures had appeared again. At that moment, trembling with fear, the young people clung to each other more tightly. That night left a feeling of anxiety in the souls of young people, and a trace of fear that they could not make sense of. With the first light of the morning, they quickly packed their belongings and moved away from that campsite. This experience would remain an unforgettable memory in their lives, but now they were determined not to set foot on that campsite again. As the young people walked away from the campsite, in the morning light, the silence of the dark forest they had left behind still echoed in their minds. As they were moving forward in tired and anxious moods, they took one last look at the campsite. Looking towards it, the smoke of a campfire was quietly rising in one of the rooms. Along with the humming of the wind and the songs of birds, they could still sense the traces of mysterious beings deep in the forest. Indistinct figures were decaying suddenly out of sight among the trees. Maya turned her worried gaze to her other friends and took a deep breath. This experience was really scary. "It's time to get out of here," said Helen thought, as she fixed her eyes on the campsite. That mysterious figures were still roaming the forest. "Yes, you are right. Something is different in this campground. I'm never going back again," he replied. Tom and Alex silently approved and drove away from the forest. In deep silence, as they walked away, the fear and curiosity in their eyes buried deep the memories they had left behind of that mysterious place. Slowly the silence of the forest returned. The campsite was again enveloped in the mystery of silence, with the light breeze of the wind. The mysterious melody echoing decently among the trees began to be heard again. That mysterious campsite, with its mysteries hidden in it, was quietly waiting, without revealing its mysteries to anyone. The Starry Mountain Camp was famous for its mysterious nature and quiet atmosphere. This was the junction point of escape and discovery. But tonight, the stars seemed to be hidden behind clouds, with only the moonlight casting a faint glow over the forest. Alex, who was the leader of the group, started telling an old legend to his friends sitting by the fire. The story was about a time when a few lost travelers did not return. The existence of strange figures wandering among the mystery of the forest and the silence of the night was full of rumors. While the story was being told, the campfire began to show strangeness. Suddenly, a strange light shone in the forest. The figures seemed to dance decently among the trees like shadows. There was confusion and unease among the group at the approach of the figures wandering in the forest. The hearts of the young people began to beat rapidly. However, the figures suddenly disappeared, and only a silence remained. The young people had difficulty understanding what had happened. As the night advanced, the campfire slowly went out, and only moonlight remained. The young people quietly made their way to their tents. Unable to make sense of that mysterious night, in the mystery of Starry Mountain surrounded by silence, Alex and his friends have engraved this event in their memory as a memory that they will not forget. The next morning, although the eyes of the young people were still sleepy due to fatigue, they could see traces of strange figures walking around the campsite, among the trees. There were still traces that they could not decipher. Alex gathered his courage and decided to follow the tracks. His friends watched him curiously. The tracks were leading them deeper into the forest. As we went deeper, the atmosphere became more and more strange. The images were becoming more blurred and the figures more indistinct. While they were looking for an explanation, a momentary flash of light and a sudden breeze completely disappeared the figures. The young people were left alone in the forest. The silence suddenly intensified and became more pronounced than ever, hugging each other. They froze under the influence of the mysterious event. From that moment on, that strange night at the Starry Mountain camp would always remain a secret in their minds. Alex and his friends returned before they could make sense of that mysterious night. What the legendary figures were and the facts of that night have always remained an enigma. The Red Forest Camp was known for its silence and the fascinating view of nature. At night, the stars light up the sky, but that night, the sky was covered with clouds. The stars seemed to be hidden. One of the young people gathered around the campfire began to tell a mysterious legend. The story begins when he decides to track down a group of travelers who got lost in the forest. Rumors about mysterious beings roaming the depths of the forest were being talked about everywhere. During the legend told, the campfire began to flicker, and suddenly a strange light appeared in the forest. Figures began to appear decently among the trees, but quickly disappeared and reappeared. Confusion and anxiety have increased among young people, seeing the figures forming around the light. The young people disappeared in an instant, and there was only silence left. The group could not make sense of what had happened, and they could not guess what had happened. Later in the night, the young people quietly retreated to their tents. The next morning, they started walking around the campsite with the tracks, but the tracks were missing. The young people made their way deep into the forest while conducting research, but they began to feel an atmosphere that was becoming increasingly strange. But suddenly, the figures wandering in the forest disappeared. The young people were left alone in silence. At that moment, they returned without being able to make sense of the mysterious night. Later in the night, the young people quietly retreated to their tents. The next morning, they started walking around the campsite to investigate the tracks, but the tracks seemed to have blurred and disappeared. The young people continued to search for the missing tracks, and this time, the tracks led them deeper into the forest. As we went deeper into the depths, the atmosphere became more and more mysterious. There was a strange electrification in the air, and the young people felt the surrounding silence intensely. But it was difficult to understand what had happened. Suddenly, the figures disappeared, and the young people were left alone in a moment of silence. At that moment, they returned without being able to make sense of the mysterious night. However, with their return, the curiosity in the young people had turned into an incomplete story of the research. They gathered around the campfire and began to discuss the strange events they had experienced. Alex broke the silence and said, "Perhaps the forest may have left a clue for us to solve its mystery. These traces and that mysterious light may be trying to tell us something." Maybe we can only find the real answers in the forest. The young people, curious, decided to return to the forest again. A new quest, more discoveries, and an adventure in the pursuit of truth awaited them. Perhaps the real answers lay in the mysterious forest. Goodbye. See you in other stories.